The War with Mexico in the Eyes of James K. Polk. Mike Carroll is the producer, Kaleb Christiansen is the project leader and the voiceover, Taylor Hart is the presenter, and Meghan Kennard is the researcher. Also, Eileen Storey is the scriptwriter. Block 1, November 20th, 2009. No nation ever existed without some sense of purpose. Manifest destiny, the belief that American domination of North America from the Atlantic to the Pacific was inevitable, revived American interest in expansion throughout the 1840s. Polk's view of the West reflected this idea of manifest destiny. His determination to occupy all lands to the Pacific Ocean and his willingness to use force to achieve it triggered the Mexican-American War. The United States pressed additional territorial demands that Mexico had no intention of complying with. After Polk annexed Mexico's northwest provinces of New Mexico and California, Mexico broke diplomatic relations with the United States. Two nations, one border. To the Mexicans, the border was the Nueces River, but to the Americans, it was the more southern Rio Grande River. At the ordering of Polk, General Zachary Taylor and 3,500 troops advanced into the disputed area between these two rivers in order to defend the United States from a Mexican invasion. In November 1845, Polk sent secret envoy John Slidell to Mexico to present an offer to the Mexican government of $30 million for the area between the Nueces and Rio Grande rivers, along with the Mexican provinces of California and New Mexico. The Mexican government refused to even receive Slidell, which infuriated Polk. In retaliation, Polk sent Taylor and his troops further south towards Mexican soil. In April 1846, a scuffle broke out between the United States and Mexico in the disputed zone. Polk made a rallying cry for war and needed little to convince Congress to issue a declaration of war. This declaration came just shortly after, on May 13, 1846. Polk concluded, as war exists, our nation is called upon by every consideration of duty and patriotism to vindicate with decision the honored rights and interests of our country. Polk exclaimed, "They shed the blood of our citizens on our own soil." Abraham Lincoln, in his spot resolution, questioned whether or not blood had truly been shed on American soil, as Polk declared. The war was soon termed Mr. Polk's War. This was a fitting title since Polk assumed the overall planning of the war's strategy, ensuring that it coordinated civilian goals with those of the military and political world. His tremendous actions during wartime expanded the role and meaning of Commander-in-Chief. In 1846, General Taylor and his army captured northern Mexico cities of Palo Alto and Monterrey. Meanwhile, Colonel Stephen Kearny set off on a quest for New Mexico and California. Santa Fe surrendered peacefully, and when Kearny arrived in California, other American troops were present to assist in taking over Southern California. With a year already past, the war grew increasingly brutal and exhausting as Scott tried to force past the Mexican army to Mexico City. Avenging the high casualty rates, American troops committed many atrocities, murder, robbery, and rape against Mexican citizens. After 6 arduous months, Scott took Mexico City and Mexican resistance finally ceased. Nicholas Trist went to Mexico to deliver Polk's terms for peace. Unfortunately, President Polk intended to send greater demands, but Trist ignored the recall order. If Trist had followed orders, the United States may have acquired more for their money. Mexico signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo on February 2, 1848, agreeing to cede its northern provinces of California and New Mexico, along with accepting the Rio Grande River as the boundary of Texas. In return, the United States agreed to pay Mexico $15 million. Just 10 years later, the United States added another 30,000 miles of land in parts of present-day New Mexico and Arizona for $10 million in the Gadsden Purchase. The Mexican-American War was the first in which citizens were updated on the war's daily events thanks to the press. The penny press learned quickly that war news was extremely appealing to the public. Many questioned the necessity of the Mexican-American War. However, its profound impact on America's future is undeniable. It paved the way for our settling from Texas to California, for our discovery of gold in the West, and for our image as an expansionist empire. Without Polk's decision to enact war, we may have still been tourists in those regions of the West. All Mexico was the major chatter of the time, especially amongst Polk's administration. Though the war was great to a larger scale than anybody had anticipated, lasting a year and a half, it linked the United States to the Pacific Ocean. The United States was now continental. The United States now controlled the land between the two oceans. the United States had finally attained their desire for manifest destiny. The legacy of this war is certainly overshadowed by the Civil War, which broke out just 20 years later. Nonetheless, one must appreciate the impact of this war and the 1.2 million square miles that it added onto the United States.